That's so fair. They have a little, and you have 2 minutes.
She's right in front of us. There's a statue. She's right in front of us. Yeah, so you see somebody just there. Tiny.
Good to see you. Long time no see. It is. Just a cool. Oh, thank you. That's it. So what's it looking like? It's just like that's okay. So we're doing the launch again. Yeah.
Yay!
We'd like to say a few words. Just very, short and sweet. Yes.
Oh, look at that. We did it, guys. We did it.
We're going to get started if you're okay just to take your seats. I'll just give it a minute while people get settled. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out today. Really, really appreciate you giving up this morning to come and hear the results. Before we get started, I really want to acknowledge that we're located today on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh Nation. We also have a really strong relationship with Métis Nation of BC and acknowledge their continuing commitment to this land and their ancestral ties. And we have the privilege to go all over BC to the First Nations communities all over British Columbia, and whose young people have participated in this survey, so I really want to kind of acknowledge and honour those as well. I'm going to start with a ministerial address from Minister Grace Law from the Ministry of Children and Family Development. So I'm going to invite up Catherine Talbot, Executive Director from MCFD, who will talk us through that. While Catherine's coming up, I just wanted to say the plan for this morning is you're going to listen first to the Minister and Catherine, then I'll talk for about half an hour sharing the results of the AHS. We're going to hear from our Youth Research Academy briefly, our Young Indigenous Research Team briefly, and then we're going to share a hip-hop video that some incredible young hip-hop artists have made, which is really looking at the back page data from the survey. If there's a fire, there's plenty of exits and we can all get out safely. Please don't use the elevators. If you need the washrooms, there's male and female washroom on this floor, there's a accessible washroom on this floor, and there's a gender neutral washroom on the second floor. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine now.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for having me, Annie, and your incredible organization, the McCreary Center Society. It is my pleasure to be here with you today. I am the Executive Director for Strategic Initiatives in the Ministry of Children and Family Development, and I have had the pleasure and privilege of leading the transformation of how youth transition out of government care in British Columbia, now known as affectionately as the SAGE program, Strengthening Abilities, Journeys of Empowerment, which youth and young adults actually named, which is a new approach for the ministry to be placing youth and young adults at the center of our work and really listening and hearing what youth and young adults need to be successful. Our minister sends her regrets. She so wanted to be here today. Unfortunately, she was double booked, but we managed to get her to produce a video. She's a new minister in MCFD, and we're very fortunate to have her, Minister Grace Lohr, who is very engaged and interested in the work that we're doing in the ministry. Just before I turn it over to our minister, I want to thank the youth and young adults that have participated in this survey. This isn't just a survey. This is work that has gone on for decades, and it informs so much of what we do as a ministry and gives us the information that we need to make change and to be successful in advocating and making change. And I want you to know, as somebody who grew up in care in British Columbia, I know how important this data is. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Grace Lohr, and I'm the Minister of Children and Family Development. I'm gratefully joining today from the territory of the Lekwungen peoples
the
of
launch
the
of the
Songhees
2023 Adolescent Health.
I'd like to express my deep gratitude
While
for
I
the
cannot be there in
invitation to
person,
attend
I'm
the
very
launch of the
thankful for everyone's
2023
support and keen
Adolescent
interest
Health
in this
Survey
work.
results.
I'd
While I
like
cannot be
to
there in
extend a
person,
special
I'm very
thank you to the
thankful
event
for everyone's
organizers
support
and the
and keen
McCreary
interest in this
Center
work.
Society for their extensive
I'd like
work
to
on
extend
this
a
survey.
special thank you to the event
The
organizers
AHS
and the
is a
McCreary
tremendous
Center
research
Society
initiative
for their
led by the
extensive
McCreary
work
Center
on this
Society.
survey.
And the survey is
The
so
AHS
important
is a
to the work of the
tremendous
ministry
research
and that of many
initiative
others
led by
in
the
the
McCreary
community
Center
because of
Society.
its long history
And the survey
the
is
critical
so
role
important
of
to the
young
work of the
people, parents,
ministry and that of many
experts in
others
its
in
development.
community because of its
Our
long
government is
history
proud to
and the
partner
critical
with
role
McCreary on
of
this
young
work
people,
as it
parents, and
provides
experts
valuable
in its development.
input and solutions.
Our government is
on
proud
youth
to
health
partner
and
with
well-being
McCreary on this work
directly from
as it
youth
provides
themselves.
valuable
The
information,
tens of
input, and
thousands of
solutions on youth
12
health
to 19
and well-being
in nearly every school
directly
district
from youth
across the
themselves.
province
The input
every
of
5
tens
years
of
gives us a
thousands
much
of
clearer
youth,
picture of
12
trends
to
of
19,
health
in
and
nearly
well-being
every school
for young
district
people
across
in
the
their
province
communities.
every 5
With
years
the
gives us a
invaluable
much
data,
clearer
we
picture
better
of
know
trends
how
of
government,
health and
parents,
well-being
caregivers,
for young people
service
in their
providers,
communities.
and communities can
With the
support
invaluable
the
data,
youth in their
we
lives.
better know how government,
From the
parents,
prevalence of racial
caregivers, service
discrimination,
providers,
its
and
impact on
communities
the
can
health and
support
mental health
the
of
youth
youth,
in their lives.
to the observation
From the
of increased
prevalence
rates
of
of
racial
purging in
discrimination
2022,
and its impact
from
on the health
barriers to
and mental
accessing
health of
necessary
youth,
mental health services,
to the
to
observation
link
of
between
increased rates of
physical and
purging in
sexual abuse and
2018,
substance use.
from barriers
The
to
results in your
accessing necessary
2018
mental
survey
health
are the
services,
kind of thing
to the
I,
link
as
between
minister, need
physical
to
and
know.
sexual abuse and substance
It is for
use.
this reason
The
I'm
results
so
in your
grateful for your
2018
work
survey are
and
the
the
kind of thing
38,000
I,
students
as minister,
who
need
completed
to
the
know.
survey in 2018.
It is for this reason I'm
Completing a
so
survey of
grateful
this
for your work
magnitude is
and the
no easy task,
38,000 students
and we
who
are
completed the
extremely
survey in
appreciative of
2018.
all the progress that McCreary
Coordinating a
Center
survey of
Society
this
has made
magnitude
for
is
the
no
last
easy task,
32 years
and
of
we
the
are
AHS.
extremely appreciative
The
of all the
results from the
progress that
AHS are
McCreary
critical
Center
as we
Society has
continue to
made for
identify
the last
opportunities for
32 years
improvement
of the
and better meet
AHS.
the needs of young
The
people
results
across the
from the
province.
AHS are critical
As the
as
new
we
minister of
continue to identify
MCFD, I'm committed
opportunities
to
for
keeping
improvement
youth's
and better meet the
voices
needs
at
of
the
young
center of
people
our work.
across the province.
And I'll carefully listen
As the
to
new
the
minister of
suggestions and
MCFD,
input
I'm
and
committed to
direction
keeping
youth have
youth
provided through this
voices
survey
at the center of our work, and I'll carefully listen to the suggestions and input and direction youth have provided through this survey so that we can better improve our systems of care and support. As a former academic researcher and university instructor, this kind of research and data gives us an important picture directly from youth themselves, and that is truly remarkable. I'm looking forward to hearing about the 2023 AHS results and working together with partners, youth, and community to continue to move forward to better services and systems so that we can improve the lives of youth in the province. Again, thank you to all the BC students, teachers, nurses, superintendents, and Mercury staff who have been instrumental in ensuring that this province-wide survey concerns everybody.
Fantastic. So, if you're not familiar with the Adolescent Health Survey, I think the Minister did a great job of summing it up. It's been around since 1992. The picture there is the cover of the first report. As the Minister said, it's done every 5 years, so this is the 7th wave that we're launching today. As I'm talking through, if I'm saying there's a difference, it's a statistically significant difference. And I just wanted to clarify, we do some gender differences, and we call those male, female, and non-binary, rather than boys, girls, and non-binary youth. And that was because young people, when we kind of were developing the survey, those terms were really not resonating with them, and particularly with older girls. So if you hear me talking about males, females, and non-binary, I'm talking about gender. So for the 2023 survey, it took place in the spring last year. We got 38,488 grade 7 to 12 students complete the survey. That's the highest number we've ever had, which was fantastic. And we had 59 of the 60 districts take part, which is also the highest number that we've had at any one time. And it's considered representative of 98% of students in mainstream school. So I'm just going to start, in that age range, I should say. So I'm just going to start with a kind of profile of young people. I apologise, I've got some notes. I don't know the numbers off by heart yet. I will, but I don't yet. So in terms of the young people who filled it out, about half identified as male, 45% as female, and 5% as non-binary. This is up from 2% 5 years ago. We also had 94% who were cisgender, and there was a slight increase in young people who identified as trans. And we had a decrease in those who identified their sexual orientation as straight, so down from 82% to 75%. We continue to see increasingly diverse family backgrounds. European remains the most common background in BC, but definitely it's been going down for over the 30 years. And we've seen steady increases in young people who identify as African, as South Asian, and as Southeast Asian, in particular in the last 5 years. We had 1 in 10 young people identify as Indigenous, and Sarah from our Young Indigenous Research Team is going to share some brief information about Indigenous news after me. We asked a question about religion this time around. About half of young people didn't have any religious affiliation, and the most common one was Christian. You can see there the increase in young people speaking a language other than English at home. Over half of young people speak a language other than English at home, at least some of the time now, and you can see there 26% do most or all of the time. In terms of their home life, Rial's going to share about young people in care shortly after me, but we are definitely seeing different living situations. So we've got more young people living with grandparents, more siblings at home, so more multi-generational houses. Not unrelated to that, I think the percentage of young people who are taking care of a relative on a typical school day has increased, and as has the percentage who have a pet or some other animal that they take care of. We see a decrease in students reporting that their parents know what they're doing in their free time and their time online, but we're still seeing most students feeling really connected to their families, and we know the value of family connectedness that really holds strong as a protective factor. Sorry, I'm one behind. I'll get the hang of this. We knew that kind of poverty is such a big issue in BC right now. So we asked some questions around kind of economic well-being. We see that about a third of young people were working at a paid job during the school year. Majority were working for spending money, but we did have 12% who were working to contribute to their family income. Not surprisingly, older students are more likely to be working than younger ones, but we can see that older students also more likely to be working 21 or more hours a week. We had 3% of youth who didn't feel safe in their home, and in the past year, we had 5% who'd run away from home. This is the lowest rate we've seen in 20 years. We also had 4% who'd been kicked out. This was a decrease, and 2% who'd been homeless. And the report cover that's on the slide there, the reports are available if you're interested in kind of digging into the housing and homeless data a bit more. In terms of food security, 6% had cut the portion of their meals or had skipped meals because there wasn't enough money for food. And we had 9% who went to bed hungry because there wasn't enough money for food. This was slightly lower than we saw 5 years earlier, but was higher than we'd seen before that. And we added a new question about accessing food banks. We had 3% of students who'd eaten food from a food bank yesterday. We asked questions. In 2018, we've always really struggled to get at poverty from a young person's perspective. So in 2018, we developed the Youth Deprivation Index. We weren't sure if it was still going to fly, kind of post-COVID. So we did a lot of focus groups and things building up to the 2023 survey. We kept the 10 items that were on that 2018 survey, but we also added a new one, which was access to personal hygiene products, because young people were saying that was really something that they needed to belong, kind of post-COVID. What we saw with this time around was about a quarter of young people identified they wished they had but lacked at least one of the items in the index, and this included 4% who were deprived of 3 or more items. And we really kind of see the impact that deprivation can have on young people. So the example on the slide there is, as you can see, with kind of each extra item that they were deprived of, the less likely they were to feel hopeful for the future. And we see the same stair-stepping effect with lots of different kind of outcomes as well. Moving on to physical health. Most young people rated their health as good or excellent, as you can see there, but that has decreased. So that's dropped 10% in a decade. It had dropped between 2013 and 2018, and it continues to drop. We do see young people in the lower grades are more likely to rate their health as good or excellent. In terms of health conditions, we're continuing to see declines in young people reporting a long-term or chronic medical condition. We can see there the percentage reporting they had a learning disability has doubled in the past 5 years. And we also have about 1 in 5 students who didn't have what they needed to overcome the barriers that they faced because of their health condition or disability. Sleep is a hot topic right now. Less than half of young people slept for at least 8 hours, so 42% slept for 8 hours the night before taking the survey. That's continued to decline over the years. We also had 26% who reported that their sleep was interrupted, and most young people were doing something after they were expected to be asleep. Most commonly they were on social media, but also around half were doing homework. And we only had 1 in 10 who actually went offline and didn't engage in any activities after they were expected to be asleep. And you can see the real difference by grade there. By the time we get to grade 12, only 26% of young people were getting 8 hours sleep. Most young people exercised on at least 1 day in the past week, but only 19% of those 12 to 17 were actually meeting the physical activity guidelines for their age group. We did have an increase in those reporting an injury serious enough to require medical attention, and also an increase in those reporting concussion. And less than half of young people who had experienced a serious concussion were able to get medical treatment for that concussion. In terms of access to healthcare, most young people did have access to healthcare. Most young people had seen a dentist in the past year and had been able to access medical treatment when they needed it, but we did see a decrease in those accessing a family doctor and a walk-in clinic, and also in those accessing a youth clinic. And 2% had never seen a dentist. We kind of know the value of physical health and of young people having access to the medical services that they need. So just an example there of kind of the better health outcomes and mental health that we saw in young people who were exercising, and particularly on those who were exercising every day. Moving on to mental health. Students were less likely to rate their mental health positively than they were their physical health, and we've seen a huge decrease in young people reporting good or excellent mental health. Again, we see young people in the lower grades more likely to rate their mental health positively, but it's dropped over 20% in a decade in terms of those reporting good or excellent mental health. You can also see in terms of kind of young people's quality of life rating, they're less likely than 5 years ago to think their life was going well, that they had a good life, and more likely to wish that they had a different life. We also see, in comparison to 5 years ago, young people are less likely to feel hopeful for the future, less likely to think that they're good at something or that they have a skill, and less likely to feel good about themselves. Though we still see that the majority do feel these. And we asked a new question about loneliness this time. A quarter of students often or always felt lonely. We asked some questions about stress and despair. 89% had experienced at least a little stress in the past year, including 13% who were so stressed that they couldn't function properly. This is slightly higher than we've seen over the past decade, but is not as high as we were seeing 25 years ago. And we definitely see, as you can see from the graph, those in the higher grades are more likely to be experiencing extreme stress in the past month. About half felt that they managed the stress in their life well or very well, and 20% felt that they managed it poorly. We also asked a question about despair, and we saw that around 2/3 experienced at least some level of despair, and this included 8% who felt so sad, hopeless, or discouraged that they wondered if anything was worthwhile. In terms of self-harm, so we asked about self-harm in the past year. 24% of youth had cut or injured themselves on purpose without the intention of killing themselves. And you can see the increase there from 5 and 10 years ago. We did see some real grade differences with self-harm, with those in grades 7 to 9 more likely than those in older grades to be self-harming. And we also saw young people reporting other types of self-harm. So, for example, 11% had over-exercised or exercised with an injury, with a specific intention of kind of punishing themselves. We also had 18% who seriously considered suicide, and 5% who had attempted suicide. The seriously considering suicide rate was comparable to 5 years ago and higher than we'd seen previously, and the percentage who would attempt was a slight rise. And we also had 29% of students who at some point had a close friend or relative who had attempted or died by suicide, and 13% who had had this experience in the past year. In terms of specific conditions, there was an increase in most conditions that young people reported, and we saw a doubling in the percentage, or at least a doubling, who had ADHD and autism in comparison to 5 years ago, but we did see a slight decrease in those reporting depression. %18 of those who felt they needed mental health services in the past 12 months had not been able to access them. This was unchanged from 5 years ago and higher than a decade ago. The most common reason young people missed out on needing mental health care was because they didn't want their parents to know. We asked some new questions about access to virtual mental health services and counselling. 14% had accessed virtual counselling, and about 1/3 of these preferred it to in-person. The remainder would have preferred to get in-person counselling. Family and friends were the most common source of reliable information about mental health. We asked young people where they went if they needed reliable information. Most went to family and friends, but we had 27% who didn't know where to go if they needed reliable information about mental health. In terms of eating behaviours, we've seen a 10% drop in young people eating breakfast on school days. And we definitely see youth in the higher grades are less likely to be eating breakfast and less likely to be eating meals in general. And you can see on the graph there, there's a decrease in eating fruit, veggies, or salad. And I would say, please help yourself to fruit, veggies, and salad at the back, because they're going to take it away at 11 under food safe. So there's a chance to get your daily 5 in. But yeah, that's decreased over the past 15 years. And you can see there with energy drinks, that's doubled in the past 5 years and tripled in the past 10 years. And we're also seeing an increase in purging. The minister mentioned purging behaviours, so vomiting on purpose after eating. We've seen an increase in that kind of behaviour. We only have 1 in 10 young people who felt very satisfied with their body image and how they looked. And we had young people saying that they felt that they'd lost control of how much they were eating. In terms of sexual health, we had 17% who'd ever had oral sex and 16% who'd ever had sexual intercourse. These are the lowest percentages we've ever seen for this. And we have to acknowledge that not all sexual activity is consensual. So we also had 7% of youth who'd been forced into sexual activity by another youth and 2% by an adult. And you can see from the graph there, it used to be that young people were waiting kind of longer waiting until they were 15 or older before they first had intercourse. This has decreased for the first time this time. And we did see that most young people who had ever had sex had been sexually active in the past 12 months. 1% reported that they'd ever had STI, which is pretty similar to rates that we've seen previously. We did see an increase in condom use during oral sex, but a decrease in condom use during sexual intercourse, and that's dropped by about 12% from a decade ago. And we're also seeing a worrying increase in those who are using withdrawal as their only method of birth control. We added some new questions this time around about sex education. 80% reported that they'd received sex ed at school, and most of these young people found it helpful. The majority felt that it started at the right age for them. It was applicable to their gender identity, their sexual orientation. Fewer who had a disability felt that it was relevant to them or their disability. In terms of substance use, we had 26% of youth who'd ever vaped. We didn't ask about ever vaping in 2018, but we've now got fewer young people who've ever vaped than vaped in the past month in 2018. But we do see over half of youth who've tried vaping and went on to vape in the past month, including 15% who vaped daily. And I think you can just see kind of from the graph how addictive vaping is. 75 of young people who vaped had done so within 30 minutes of waking up. Smoking, we have the lowest rate that we've ever seen. 15% of youth had ever smoked, but we do see that vaping seems to be leading to smoking. We're seeing that correlation coming out there. And we are seeing young people smoking at a younger age. So 24% had first smoked at 12 or younger, which was an increase from 2018. And we had about 3% of young people who smoked daily. In terms of alcohol, 38% have tried alcohol, similar to what we saw with smoking. This is the lowest rate that we've seen in 30 years, so it's about half what we saw in 1992. But also reflecting what we see with smoking, there was an increase in those who first drank at age 12 or younger, and young people are less likely to wait until they're 15 to try it. And we do see most young people who have ever tried it go on to drink in the past month. And we had about a third who had been binge drinking in the past month, and about a quarter who were drinking above the kind of guidelines of 2 drinks on any one occasion. And that was in the past week. Cannabis reflects what we've seen with alcohol and smoking as well, so a decrease. And this is the first time we've asked about cannabis. The legislation changed literally just after we finished surveying in 2018. So a decrease in young people who've ever tried it. Most common age to first do so was 14 or 15. But again, reflecting what we see with alcohol and smoking is that those who do use it are using younger. So an increase in those starting at 12 or younger, and a decrease in those waiting until they're 15 or older. Most young people who use cannabis smoked it, and you can also see that 6% had lost somebody to COVID. The percentage of young people who had been sexually abused was higher than we've seen in previous years. You can see that 2% higher than 5 years ago, and even higher than 10 years ago. And we're also seeing that physical abuse has increased over the past decade, but is lower than we saw kind of 20, 30 years ago. In terms of sexual harassment, 40% had experienced verbal sexual harassment. This was similar to the results that we've seen over the past decade, but there was an increase in young people who experienced physical sexual harassment. And as you can see in the graph there, those in the higher grades were more likely to report both verbal and physical sexual harassment. About 4 in 10 youth have dated in the past year, and we saw the highest rates of physical violence in a relationship that we've seen in 20 years. And we asked a new question about kind of digital dating abuse. 13% of young people had had this experience. We had 35% of young people who had experienced discrimination in the past year. Most commonly, this occurred at school or online, was the next most common. And for most young people, this experience happened rarely in the past year, but for 7%, it had happened regularly. And we saw an increase in most forms of discrimination, including racism and discriminations on the grounds of gender and sexual orientation. We did see a decrease in kind of the in-person bullying behaviors, so a decrease in social exclusion and severe teasing. Not much change for physical attacks, and an increase in online victimization. Not surprisingly, we also see a decrease in in-person victimization perpetration and an increase in online perpetration. In terms of school experiences, young people felt less connected to school than we've seen, and gains that we've been making up to 2018, we're now seeing going back down again. And we definitely see those young people in the middle grades are the less likely to feel connected to school. The example on the graph there as well is feeling safe at schools. And we asked about school safety in specific locations as well as kind of a general feeling of safety. And we've seen about a 20% drop in feeling safe in places like the washrooms over the past 5 years. We have some questions about school absences. Most common reasons is illnesses and appointments, but we've got more than 1 in 5 students who miss school because of mental health challenges. This was up from 15% in 2018. And we see young people more likely to be missing because of their mental health in the higher grades, and those in the lower grades are more likely to be missing due to bullying or because they've been suspended. Most students still plan to attend post-secondary, but we do see the percentage who are planning to do so has decreased over the past decade. So it's dropped about 10% in 10 years of those planning to go on to college and university. In terms of kind of relationships and connections, most young people are using their phone to connect with family and friends, but they're also using their phone to connect in other ways, including kind of social media and all those things as well. We did see a decrease in young people using their phone for pornography and for sexting. But we do see, I think the highest rate of young people needing help for their substances was for vaping, and that was 5%. We see 18% of young people feeling that their social media use had reached the point where they needed help, or they've been told they needed help. Most young people had at least one in-person friend, but this has decreased, as has the percentage of young people who have multiple friends. So the percentage who have 3 or more friends, in-person friends, has decreased. And we've seen a rise in young people having online friends. Most young people have an adult in their community who cared about them, and that was an increase. So that this one is some positives on this slide. And we do see an increase in young people who felt that they got the right amount of time with their family and friends, but we definitely see in older students much more likely to report in that they don't get enough time with family, friends on their own and in nature. And we had 10% of young people who dated someone online who they'd never met in person. In terms of having an adult to talk to, we know this is a huge protective factor. You can see there was a slight increase in young people having an adult inside the family that they could talk to, as well as young people having somebody outside the family they could talk to. And we had 26% of youth who had both of these, which is an increase from previous years, or certainly from 5 years ago. Most young people felt at least a little connected to their community, but they were less likely than 5 years ago to feel quite or very connected. And similar to what we saw with family connectedness, those in the lower grades were more likely to feel connected to community. Most young people felt safe in their neighbourhood during the day, less so at night, but still the majority did. And around half of those who used transit felt safe on transit, but 17% never felt safe when they were on transit. And we asked about all sorts of kind of other types of connection. We have 75% of young people who felt really proud of their culture. We had about half of young people who felt that spirituality was important to them, and about 62% who felt connected to the land and nature. And these were all big protective factors. In terms of kind of recreational activities, we asked some questions about swimming for the first time. 29% of young people were not confident swimmers, and 9% could not swim at all. There was no grade differences with swimming, so they were no more likely to be able to swim by grade 12 than they were in grade 7. We saw increase in informal sports, so that's things like cycling and biking, and an increase in extreme sports participation. That's really risen kind of over the years. But we're seeing a decrease in the more organised sports, so soccer teams, those kind of things, as well as in dance, yoga and exercise classes. And 64% of young people experience barriers to participating in these types of activities. The most common one was being too busy, but But we also saw kind of like, whilst older students, it tended to be that they were too busy. We did see those in the middle grades dropping out because it was too competitive. We had 13% who took part in cultural or traditional activities on a weekly basis over the past year, and 19% who volunteered this frequently. And we do see real benefits to being connected to the community in these kind of ways. Just over half of young people found their activities meaningful. This is a big drop from 5 and 10 years ago. And we know how protective that is. We also asked about a range of gambling activities, most of which I don't quite understand what they are, but they involve loot boxes and things like that. And we saw quite a number of young people participating in those types of gambling activities, as well as kind of playing dice and cards for money and things like that. We had 1% of youth who felt they had a gambling addiction, and 12% who felt they had a video gaming addiction. So that's kind of like all the data. What we really see throughout the data is that young people reported much better health if their basic needs were met, if they were able to kind of engage in regular exercise, have access to healthy foods and a good night's sleep. Also, those young people who had access to reliable information, be it about kind of mental health, sexual health, substance use, all those kind of things, as well as access to the services that they needed, be they medical, mental health, kind of anything like that. Definitely see the kind of protective value of having supportive friends and families, and of the huge role that having positive connections to school, culture, and community can play. So to kind of sum it all up then, we're definitely seeing changes in the youth population and in their living situation. So more living with grandparents and things like that. We're seeing decreases in young people trying pretty much all the substances that we asked about, and also in being sexually active. But we are seeing among those who do use substances that they're tending to do so at a younger age, and those who are sexually active are engaging in maybe more risky kinds of sexual activity. We're definitely seeing increases in mental health challenges and decreases in connection to school community, as well as young people having fewer friends. I didn't really get into the gender differences too much, but definitely overall, we sort of see males are doing, reporting the best outcomes, females not doing as well as males, and non-binary youth, kind of the outcomes for the most part are not as positive. And we definitely see kind of high rates of discrimination and that coming into play, and all those are kind of in the report. And just as I sort of finished on there, the real value that the protective factors can have in supporting healthy development. So I'm going to hand to Rial in a second, but I'll just pause in case there's any questions or comments. I realised, like it was kind of hard standing up here this time. I've done this 4 times, and the results have been considerably more positive the last 3 times than they were overall. But I think there's some highlights in there, and I know a couple of the findings that Rial and Sarah are going to share are really kind of positive and promising. But yeah, and I should have said at the beginning, I was remiss, I binned the notes, but I just wanted to thank kind of the public health nurses and everybody who made this possible. Young people do answer honestly, and that's because nurses are the ones who administer it, and we know that over and over again. And it was a terrible time for them just coming out of COVID to go into schools and do this. And, it was a rough kind of go with the schools as well. And I just appreciate kind of all the school people, all the nurse people who made this possible and who gave the youth this voice. So I'll stop there and take any questions if there's.
Can you see which school district didn't participate?
Peace River North. They originally signed up and then they just didn't have the capacity.
So what do you think the biggest reason is for the decline in mental health?
I think they're all linked, Nathan, kind of like it's so hard to pull one thing out in terms of, we know the huge value that sleep has, and young people are sleeping less well. We know the huge value of connection to community, to school, having friends, so I think there's so many factors playing into it.
Any analysis of data about effectiveness of services which was created hopefully after previous survey?
Sorry,
After
services.
previous survey, was any services created to support youth in schools or in community? Was it any data or analysis or information about how the services was affected? Was that affected?
So, so has the survey data led to any services? Is that kind of question?
Yeah. In the previous, and was they affected?
Yes.
They are basically
Yes.
add with the services and so we can learn.
Yeah, I mean, I know Island Health took, maybe it was probably the 2013 data and just looked at young people on the island who did not have access to services and then created kind of youth wellness centres and things within those services which have been evaluated and are effective, I think. The bit we've got like examples like one-off kind of, I know sexual health service that started in one community that then was serving those young people. So I think so. I mean, I'm hoping that, we can use this data as well and think about that upstream things as well. Like we're getting all these fantastic foundries, we're getting the child and youth mental health services, which we really need and will be a huge asset to communities across the country, across the province rather. But it's going to take a while for those to roll out in every province and in every community. And we really do need to kind of focus on some of the upstream things as well. Our biggest reason why young people weren't using services was not what their parents not wanting to know. So there's a whole piece around there that's not about bricks and mortar and stuff. It's about a much bigger picture than that, I think.
Annie, can I just ask you to please, can you please repeat the question into the mic so that the folks on the live stream can hear? Thanks.
So you mentioned that this is some of the more negative results in the last few years. It's not just as many positive outcomes, maybe.
I like that story.
That works. Are you concerned about these results that you're seeing? Like, do they worry you, or does this seem like it might be a blip or natural sort of variation?
Both, I think. It's like to see that 24% of young people had self-harmed in the past year is shocking, and a high percentage that. So just to say it's a blip doesn't do justice to those young people and the experience that they've gone through. I think, but we also in the context of we are coming out of a huge pandemic and all the impacts that has, and would I hope that the 2028 data is much more positive? I would, and I feel like there was so many gains that we were seeing. The 3 times I've done this previously, there was so much that you could say, we're doing this work, we can see the difference, we can see the gains, and then to see that change is different. And I think for us, the job now is going and having those conversations about what's driving that data. Why are young people who are using substances doing so at a younger age than we've seen before, when the majority of young people are not using substances? Like, are we targeting the wrong age group? Are we asking, like those kind of things? So I think it can really help us to kind of steer.
I just follow up really quickly just on COVID. How did you account for, were you able to account for COVID in any way in this, or is it just medical results?
Yeah, and the question was how did COVID kind of impact? So and it's really hard because in the build up to the survey, when we had a draft of the survey, we had lots more questions relevant to COVID about young people's experience during COVID. And kind of the feedback we got was they're not that relevant, really. We're not putting things in that context. So young people weren't thinking about it in the context of COVID. So it's kind of hard to tease some of those pieces out. The schools were a very different climate to what they are this year to what they'll be next year, right? I think, as we kind of get back. And some students will have had more of an in-school experience versus an out-of-school experience during COVID. So I think it's just taking them in that wider context, maybe.
Thank you.
You mentioned COVID and young people's hope for the future, were there any questions or indications from young people about how climate change is affecting their health in the future?
We didn't get a great question on there. We piloted some questions, but 100% of young people were worried about the climate, so it didn't really get us anywhere, you know. So we ditched it from there. But like for sure, on the back page comments, which we kind of hear a little bit about in the sort of hip hop. So you do see that, you know, how that hopelessness that kind of justice is impacting people.
Thank you for sharing the results. I really appreciate all the efforts behind this. I just want to start with this. You spoke about like the body image and the young people practices when it comes to have their breakfast or having meals, etc. And I feel like it's a bit concerning because like young people are less likely to take a breakfast or like take meals, etc. And you spoke about the body image. So I'm wondering if this is like related more to body image only, or maybe I'm not sure, since you mentioned the climate change about food access or like food insecurities, etc., right? Or food security. So I'm not sure if this was part of the survey or was a question. Yeah.
Yeah, that was about food security and impact on kind of whether body image is dealing. Yeah, and I mean, we saw a drop in young people accessing their breakfast programs at school, which I think is interesting because we've really put a lot of focus on building up breakfast programs, but there's some real stigma attached in some schools to accessing those breakfast programs. And also, you know, we did get some comments from young people about like, you know, the school starts too early to have breakfast. You just get into school and get into class on time is what the focus is. So they're going without meals. And you know, we do see young people skipping lunch. We do see young people skipping dinner as well. And I think I don't know the numbers totally, but I think it was 9% that were taking food home from a school program. So we're relying on school programs for food. And then we had 3% who'd used the food bank the day before. And we know like not all food banks are available every day. So that's probably an undercount of young people who are accessing food from a food bank. So I think like for sure food security is an issue. I'll take one last question if that's okay.
When it comes to technology adoption that is becoming so much more prevalent in our society, whether it's video games, whether it's internet addiction, we've seen a few statistics that have indicated that there's a lot of changes in our youth's behavior. Are there any changes planned for the survey or any testing that's going on in order to account for this adoption of technology?
That's a great question. I probably should have gone into this at the beginning, but we tried this time. We had this great idea that we'd just go online this time around, and you know, young people could do it on their phone, and it would be great. And it didn't quite work out like that. And I mean, I think that's sort of the point that we're in history. Whereas we all thought that it would be great, and that 30 kids could all log onto the Wi-Fi at the same time, and it would all work, and it didn't. And it wasn't only in rural and remote communities where it didn't work. It didn't work in Burnaby. It didn't work in Vancouver. You know, like, and we just blew everybody's Wi-Fi system. So we ended up going back to pen and paper. And we also we spent a long time making sure that you could do the phone on your, do the survey on your phone. It's 146 questions. That is brutal. And I helped with the administration in one school district where they were short on it, and it's just like, why are we putting young people through this? This is awful, you know? So I think it's a process, and we need to think about it. I think, you know, I mean, they're talking about banning cell phones in schools right now, and you could take this data and argue that that's a good thing. You could take this data and argue that it's a terrible idea, you know? So I just think it's kind of like, we need to continue to evolve the survey to get that. I mean, we literally have questions on there that I don't understand what they mean about the loot boxes and the thing, but it's an issue and it's a thing, so they're on there. So I'm sort of aware of the time. We'll take a break kind of after the hip hop, and I'll stay around and answer any more questions then if there is any, but I'm just going to hand over to Rial now, who's just going to share some data on behalf of the Youth Research Academy.
Hello everyone, I'm Riel, and I'm one of the peer mentors for the 8th cohort of the Youth Research Academy. The YRA is a group of youth from ages 16 to 24 who have experience with the government care system. We work with McCreary to conduct youth-led research projects. Our cohort started in June of last year and will end at the end of this March. As an example of some of the work the YRA does, after the 2018 BC AHS, the YRA produced a report called Supports in the Spotlight, which looked at the health and well-being of youth in government care in BC. It was put together using data from the 2013 and 2018 surveys, and it identified protective factors that can support youth care experience to achieve positive health outcomes. We have also started working on an analysis for a report which will build off of this one and will include data from the current BC AHS. So far, we have identified different types of care experienced by youth who completed the 2023 BC AHS. As you can see here, youth experienced various types of cares or alternatives to cares. In order to compare current data to that from 5 years ago, we had to focus on youth who had ever had experience in a foster home, group home, or on a youth agreement, because some of the other types of care weren't asked about in the 2018 AHS. Here we see that there have been positive changes over the past 5 years among those with these types of care experience. That including increased feelings of community connection, increase in those who had an adult outside of their family they could talk to if they were having a serious problem, an increase in those who participated at least weekly in cultural or traditional activities, and a decrease in those who missed out on needed mental health services in the past year. At our time in the YRA, we have also started doing analysis focused on areas of our interests. The areas of focus are school connectedness, eating behavior, food security, substance use, access and needed mental health supports, and the impact of supportive adults for youth with care experience. We plan to finish our analysis by the end of March and hope that the next cohort will continue to look at other topics relevant to supporting the health and well-being of youth in care, so that these all can be included in the report. The next cohort of the YRA will be getting started in June, so if you are or know of a youth with government care experience who would be interested in working in the YRA, please email yra@mcs.bc.ca or visit the display table for more information. Copies of the current report are also available at the display table, including the most recent report from the YRA's longitudinal study on the experiences of youth transitioning out of government care in BC. Thank you for listening.
Hi, my name's Sarah, and I'm a member of the McCreary's Young Indigenous Research Team. We're all Indigenous graduates of the YRA who work on research projects specific to Indigenous youth health. We have started to do some analysis with the 2023 BC AHS data in preparation for Reagan's Children's 6, a report about Indigenous youth health from the BC AHS. We have come up with sections we would like to look at based on the survey. These include identity, spiritual health, emotional health, mental health, the Black Road or substance use, adverse experiences, relationships with food, physical health, sexual health, extracurricular activities, ambitions, connections, and lastly, home and family. We have started by creating a profile of Indigenous youth who have completed the survey. 1 in 10 youth identified as Indigenous on the 2023 BC AHS, which was consistent with results over the past 15 years, and an increase from 7% in 2003. There were some regional differences, and the northern region had the highest percentage of youth who identified as Indigenous. Among Indigenous youth, 61% identified as First Nations, 37% as Métis, 2% as Inuit, and 6% as another Indigenous background. 11% of Indigenous youth had previously lived on reserve, and 15% were currently living on reserve. 6% identified as two-spirit, and about half reported that a family member had been in residential school, including at least one of the parents, grandparents, and other relatives. This is likely an underrepresentation, as a third of Indigenous youth did not know their family history of residential school. The 2023 BC AHS asked youth to identify their religious affiliation. 2% identified with traditional Indigenous spirituality. One of the most promising findings we have so far is that there has been an increase in youth who could speak at least a few words of an Indigenous language, and 28% 5 years ago to from 28% 5 years ago to 32% in 2023, including 2% who could have a conversation or were fluent. We're excited to dig into the data more and hope to see more improvements from Indigenous youth. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nina, and I am a peer mentor for the 8th cohort of the Youth Research Academy. And I'm here to share about the Youth Action Grants, a program led by the Youth Advisory and Action Council. The YAC is a diverse group of youth ages 15 to 24 who are passionate about engaging their communities to learn about and take action to promote youth health. Since 1995, the YAC has led projects, workshops, and created resources to promote youth health and well-being, and to raise awareness about issues that BC youth are facing. One of the YAC's ongoing projects is the Youth Action Grants. The Youth Action Grants provide up to $750 to fund projects which are youth-led and focused on addressing one or more of the findings from the BC AHS. The grants are available to youth ages 12 to 19 from school districts that have participated in the BC AHS and provide youth an opportunity to improve youth health and well-being in their school or community. Finally, we wanted to share a few examples of YAG-funded projects that have been approved last year. In Burnaby, youth from the mental health community from Caribou Hill Secondary School wanted to address that their school didn't have enough proper eating spaces for their growing student population. Their project is to create additional seating spaces in their school by improving and decorating the overflow spaces that students have been using during their lunch break. They also hope that in doing this, they'll create a more welcoming environment and will help build connections among their students. Youth from Toad River School will be building a greenhouse from January to June of this year with the support of their teacher and a local carpenter. Older students will mentor the younger ones, teaching them gardening skills, and the harvested foods will contribute to eating healthy and provide food to donate to the community. This project also aims to help students develop skills that can be used in future projects, such as carpentry and math. Finally, through the Castlebar Youth Action Network, the Every Mind Matters self-care group planned a field trip to the neighboring hot springs. Youth in this group are dealing with socioeconomic barriers and mental health challenges. This field trip provides them with an opportunity to visit the recreational space while being supported by adults, and the opportunity for youth to explore building peer relationships. For more information about the YAGs and to apply, please email yag@mcs.bc.ca or visit the McCreary website. Posters and application forms are also available at the display table in English and French. Thank you for listening. I'll hand over to Karen.
Hi, everybody. So I'd like to wrap up today's presentation by sharing a few of the examples that we have of some of the youth projects that we've been doing with some of the data that we had, some of the earlier data. So you'll see a couple of them around the room, and we have a video that Annie's been talking about too, but I wanted to start with sharing. So, one of the things we do is we sort of take some of the themes from the data, from the back page comments. And so we worked with a group of youth health ambassadors who were a group of youth who we worked with early on, who supported with the consultations for coming up with the survey, this round of the survey. And so them and the Youth Action and Advisory Council, they used two different methods to sort of explore what the data meant to them and to be able to share different ways that it resonated with them to help sort of give us a little bit more insight into what's going on in their lives. So you can see here the youth health ambassadors. They created a photo voice piece, there's two copies around the room here. So they, really explored what these different themes meant to them. They gave a little bit of a summary, so you get sort of a sense of what it looks like across different parts of the province as well. And then the Youth Action Aid Advisory Council, looking at similar data, decided they wanted to create some zines. So you'll see a few of them there sort of sharing some of the different key things that really stuck out to them that they wanted to be able to give people a little bit more information about in terms of how that looks to them on a day-to-day basis. And then one of the other things that we've done is, again, using the back page quotes. We asked them if there's anything else that they want to learn about at the end of the survey, if there's anything else that they want to share about in terms of their own health. And we get some really, really powerful quotes from the back page of the survey. Often people tell us things that they're really struggling with, sort of areas that they want more support with, things that they're anxious about, and they often explain some of their survey answers a little bit more in detail, so that they're really trying to let us know what it looks like for them. So using the quotes from the back page, we had a talented group of young hip hop artists. A few who are here today, so I'll introduce them in a couple of minutes. But they created a song and filmed a video using those back page quotes. So we can't thank them enough for all the work that they put into creating this. And also want to send a huge thank you out to the mentors that supported with this as well. So Higher Knowledge, who was there to support sort of with the creation of the song. We also worked with Back-End Recording Studio, who helped with the production piece, and then the film company, the film company Myth House Studio. So grateful for everything that they've done to make this happen. And so yeah, Talon, Justin, Cato, if you're all willing, we'd love you to have you come up, introduce yourselves, and then we'll show the video.
Hi, I'm Justin. My Nisga'a name is Achitach, which means fearless. I'm from the Nisga'a Nation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. My name is Talon. I'm from Paipa Nation in Saskatchewan, but I was born and raised in East Vancouver. It's such a pleasure to be a part of this. I want to say thank you to McCreary, thank you to Karen and everyone involved, and thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you.
So the video will be on our YouTube as well later. Feel free to share it out. And so we're really looking forward to hearing what people think as well.
My dogs stay loyal, he stay the same. Through the dark days, some things never change. Still trapped in my thoughts, so I feel away. When flashbacks come, can't run away. Honest ain't issue, can catch me with murder. Too many try up, now they looking like zombies. Call around, trying to act like my Hoya. No, I do not know you, so I'ma just tell you we were never brothers. Yeah, speak on my back, but my words ain't deeper, like, yeah. Got too many knives in my back when they got on my back. Man, look turning my back when I was stuck in the trap. Now I'm thinking right back how I acted was whack. Like, if I could take it all back, then my homie up back. Like, a wise man said, success is the best revenge. Put myself in the bench where I speak past tense. Like, I know I gotta give, had to here to avenge. I know I gotta give, had to put down the sword and go pick up a pen. Feel real, have the scent, got a message to send. Connect to a loss, stay away from afflictions. Too many are falling just cause of addictions. Just creeping around, always haunting the system. It's been the same problem, no sub-generation. Like, I got thoughts in my head, and I can't escape them. Like, ain't no sub-generation, like, ain't no sub-generation, nah.
I can't find myself. I just need somebody's help. And if this is real life, cause I can't even tell. Surrounded, feel hard, like I'm trapped in hell. Do it for the kids, do it for ourselves. Sometimes it gets so hard. I have too many scars, turn this pain into art. I'm hoping that they'll listen, cause I'm pouring out my heart.
about making friends when it just seen as different. I can stop and shop, but it still feels like no one will listen, let alone understand what I go through every day. I shed skins to ease the pain. Walk this path alone, cause when I asked for help, no one came. How can I stay preventative to something I can't contain? Like I was on hold on the suicide hotline, about to put a bullet to my brain. All my life I had to learn personal health all by myself. Let's call it my personal hell. I knew wonder why this generation is drained. They tell us to shoot for the stars, but don't show us how to aim.
Overdose, can't help to come close. Can't blame me, I'm from a broken home. I wanted help, but don't know where to go. I'm all alone. Where were you when I needed you the most? Gotta get these thoughts in my mind. Don't know when it is my time. Hate when they tell me that I'ma be fine, cause I know they lie. Don't know where I'll be if you can't listen, so just listen now. Don't know where I'll be if you can't listen, so just listen now.
Personal health and sexual health, these kids be struggling with mental health, and I don't know what I'm doing, I'm struggling myself. I'm making it out, I'm making it count. 10 toes down and I'm spinning it out. Rather than dump my pencil utensil, making it happen. I'm out, these people be talking me down. Yeah, hey, freestyle when I'm ripping the rainy. Beat the bounce, then we all could be winning. Making opinions, making decisions. Life is hard, but I'll take it, I'm living. I'm stuck in the div I'm making opinions. I'm keeping it stack and I'm running it back and I'm taking my stats and I'm running it fast. These in the beat and I'm making it fast. Don't worry about me, I'm chilling in a van. I'm making a plan, keep on the gram. Keep me on records, you know who I am. I'm keeping the stack and I'm making a fam. Yeah.
I can't find myself, I just need somebody's help. And if this is real life, cause I can't even tell. Surroundings feel hard, like I'm trapped in hell. Do it for the kids, do it for ourselves. Sometimes it gets so hard. I have too many scars, turn this pain into art. I'm hoping that they'll listen, cause
Hey, there once was a boy, sometimes he cries, sometimes he lies, but most of the time he told himself why, like he used to have these suicide thoughts, but not no more. And he used to have these feelings like no one cares, now he don't care, he just misses so much. So much.
I never wanted to feel this pain in the first place, but I feel out of pain just from looking at your face. Like you're staring at her. When you do stares at me, you get mad at me. If you wanna do me wrong, you better do it right. And now that I'm letting go of my past, now all that you can do is watch me shine bright. Shine bright.
I've been hearing many stories and they all sound the same. All these broken kids trying to go and find their place. Running from our problems like we ain't got none to face. Feeling like the others looking down with such disgrace. Getting drunk and doing drugs because no one listens to us. Being in so many places but have no position. All of this trip and trying to go and find a living. It ain't our fault, these are the cars that we're
I can't find myself, I just need somebody's help. And if this is real life, cause I can't even tell. Surroundings feel hard, like I'm trapped in hell. Do it for the kids, do it for ourselves. Sometimes it gets so hard. I have too many scars, turn this pain into art. I'm hoping that they'll listen, cause I'm pouring out my heart.
And that probably should be where we end. You know, like, we should listen because they're pouring out their heart, really. And I think, like, for me, watching, like, we had just all those back page quotes around the room to get from that to that incredible song. And it really does get stuck in your head. Like, it's a beautiful, so, like, incredible work. So thank you. It was a privilege to work alongside you on that. Thank you so much. 5 years when we released the 2018 survey, the feedback we got was that people would have liked to stick around afterwards and just kind of digest the results and have a conversation about them. So I don't know if that's where people are at today. You're very welcome to. So we thought we would take a break now, maybe a 10-15 minute break. And then if people do want to kind of stick around and have a discussion about the results, we'll set up some sort of small circles or a small circle or whatever, or I'll talk to myself. But yeah, so we'll take a 10-15 minute break. And if you want to stick around, you're more than welcome to kind of dig into the results more after that. And please do take fruit and stuff.
Yeah. Like, I know she gets I was like,